Great. Good morning. Welcome to everyone on our last meeting for July 24th. We appreciate everyone's who has joined us to discuss some very important issues regarding public safety. I am calling the meeting to order. I have a few announcements and then we'll get into our discussion with Executive Director Gardner very quickly. Announcements, we have, before I do that, I just wanted to let everyone know who is joining us from the board. Julia Richmond, Larry Martinez, and has Alfredo joined us yet?
See him.
No.
I don't see him.
Okay. All right. Very good. Excused is David Boyd. Thank you. All right. So we will begin with announcements. We still have 2 mayoral vacancies on our board, and also the joint mayoral and council appointment is still needing to be made. Will, have we received any updates for any of these?
Yes, as of yesterday, I chatted with the city council analysts and with the mayor's office of boards and commissions. They have closed their opening for the joint appointment and have interviews scheduled for August, I believe. The city council analyst is working closely with council members and the mayor's office of boards and commissions to move forward with scheduling those interviews and that appointment process. Also received confirmation from the mayor's office actually this morning that they expect to fill the 2 additional mayoral seats this cycle. So they divide their appointments into cycle periods citywide, and I'm told that the 2 open mayoral seats will be included in this current cycle. I don't have, though, the timeline for when that cycle concludes.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. Okay. Right now we have not reached quorum if Alfredo hasn't joined us, so I will postpone the minutes approval. Please let me know when he has joined, William. All right, chair update. We held a community forum on police accountability on July 15th at the Blossom House, which is on Southwest Denver. And we did have some good participation from the community. David, Alfredo, and Julia attended along with staff from the mayor's office and a representative from the police advisory board. In comparison to the last forum, which we held at Blair Caldwell, we had a smaller turnout, I should say, but we had very good questions from the audience. And so we appreciated that participation. We do have plans for one additional forum in Montbello, which will be scheduled for sometime in September. That date hasn't been determined. I also have been meeting with various members of the city council. My last meeting was with Kevin Flynn, and anticipate meeting with council members Sandoval, Romero Campbell, and Torres in the coming week. Last is our calendar review. The next meeting will be on August 14th, and Sheriff Diggins will be our guest. I know it's pretty soon after we had just talked with him, but that was the schedule as we made it in the beginning of the year. And so that is confirmed that Sheriff Diggins will be the guest at our next meeting, and that will be a virtual meeting. At this time, we provide time for the community to ask questions or make comments. If you would like to raise your hand, please, and raise the hand virtually. And I will acknowledge you in order that people, in the order that people have indicated they wish to speak. Because we're trying to make enough time for everyone to ask questions, we will limit that comment to 3 minutes. We ask that all participants maintain a respectful tone. Is anyone interested in giving comment or asking any questions?
Just to repeat from what Chair Hernandez is saying, if you'd like to give public comment, please utilize the raise your hand function now.
Okay, I'm not seeing anyone raising their hands. Is that correct, Will?
Correct.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, if you'll go ahead and make Executive Director Gardner a participant. No, excuse me, a presenter.
Standby Director Gardner, making you a presenter now. Director Gardner, if you can hear us.
Yep, I got you.
Go
Good
ahead,
morning.
Morning. You have to
If you-
forgive, yeah, you have to forgive my camera. I don't know what's going on, so it may pop on, it may pop off. I haven't fixed one of these things in a long time, so I'll be jiggling the cord to see what we get, unfortunately.
Well, that's the IT expert telling us how, even for
Yeah.
him, technology can be
I
a mess.
use,
Okay.
use that expert loosely.
Well, okay. I always believe in the hard reboot anyway.
There you go.
All right, very good. Thank you so much for coming today.
Of course.
We appreciate your time and your willingness to share information about what is happening in different areas of public safety. As you know, we have provided some questions for you in advance, and then we have other questions to address. Yeah, well, almost there.
Yeah, I'll keep working with it. I'm sorry.
You may have to use your phone.
Yeah, sorry. I'll keep working with it.
Okay, very good. Well, we have a number of questions to
Okay.
address.
Yeah.
I'm going to now, I know that we have several board members now that are on. Julia, would you like to go ahead and proceed with questions?
Sure, thank you. Al, thanks for joining us today. I think you can guess that we have a lot of questions about the directive that was recently issued from your office.
Sure.
I'd love to start off our discussion with you by understanding the context of that directive and why perhaps the board was not alerted to the fact that you all were doing a detailed look at the business processes and sort of how that all came about. So perhaps you could talk us through the history of that and talk us a little bit through why it was maybe not mentioned in any of the calls leading up we had with you leading up to its release.
Okay, I'll take this as question number 3, the part that said we'll be asking a number of questions regarding the revision. So I'll take this as a number 3. I don't know, I'll say again, and it's been said by me and it's been said by the sheriff. I'll say again that I think that this one, and as I talked to Rafina, and I believe I've talked to Monitor Castle about it, about looking forward and how we engage in these things going forward in terms of when directives come. I think the CAO has weighed in a good way to really kind of create some new guardrails and some new guidance. I think that's been a long time coming, and that helps us avoid these things in the future. No particular reason necessarily why this was not shared as much as this is something that's been worked on even before I got here. And we thought that the timing was good. And I'll say going forward, though, I think there's a new process in place for us to work more closely on these things.
Well, you said, if I may interject, you said that this had been in the works, but at the same time, if that was the case, why were we kept in the dark?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I'll repeat, I think that going forward, when we start talking about these processes, especially ones that directly impact directives, I think that guidance was extremely helpful. And I think as we move forward, those things will guide those discussions so that we're not just here again on this, but many other different things that we'll be working on in the future.
I guess I'm confused still because uh, I would think that as a matter of good faith and relationship that we would have been involved or at least told that something like this was happening. And so I appreciate that you feel like you got more clarity on protocols. However, you have sat in this board seat. And so I can imagine being on this side yourself, you might want to have information before it's released. And having gone through a year of EBD surprises with you and conversations with you, I guess I'm just sort of like really feeling a disconnect here between the experience we had together, which was that we heard from you, EBD was a bit of a surprise to you, and you weren't that happy with the process of it, and then literally did the same kind of surprise release of a significant change in discipline. And so I'm having a hard time sort of squaring that circle a little bit as to sort of like, we had lots of conversations throughout a year about a need to engage and collaborate. You yourself sat on this board and understand the value of the collaboration, partnership, and social will that goes in both directions. And so I like say more words as to how we sort of got to a surprise release of a very significant change in the discipline process.
Yeah, well, I'll say the words that I think are important. And to me, and what I'm saying is, I appreciate that. I think listening to what the board is saying and how it impacted it is probably the most important thing for me to take in and look at how I'm going to do it going forward.
Okay. All right. So there was discussion the last time that there was a great deal of analysis and data to help make the decision regarding the directive. When we asked this from the sheriff, we really didn't get a clear answer. Can you tell us more about that research and data that went into giving you informing the decision on the directive?
Yeah, I think what the sheriff shared with you when he was on here was the feedback that he got as a result of the survey that he sent out. And I think the sheriff did send that to you. I believe the sheriff did send that out to you to be for COB and OIM to take a look at. So I know that was a very big part that played in it. And I think also there were a number of different things that we've discussed as well when it comes to making sure that we try and relieve some of the choke points in the process, create those process improvements, I think is another big one. I think also the sheriff shared with you when he was on here as well about some of the soft issues that exist in terms of morale and the other things that played into this, which are important. Of course, they're not the main driver, but they are a part of it that is considered when you're talking about how to improve these processes. So those are some of the main things that we looked at. Also, we looked at the percentage of these lower level infractions. I think the 19 out of the 178, which is roughly around 10 or 11% of the overall 178 infractions, and took a really close look at that. I'll also say that that was something else that we've been able to receive a lot of guidance from CAO and taking a look at how these different infractions are within the reach and scope and of EDOS and how they would in fact impact sheriff's office discipline overall. I will say also the thought is to being really careful about how we take a look at things that trigger and much larger investigations and things that directly cause harm to those in custody, as well as making sure that we identify things that we see as a pattern and making sure that we pick those out. So there were a lot of things considered, much like the sheriff mentioned last week around collecting that data from the deputies.
Julie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, if I can just share my screen really quickly, I will bring this directive up. So the first sentence in the directive says, following a comprehensive review of the disciplinary processes and procedures. And so what I'm hearing from you is a survey that was sent to us. The only survey I can remember was a survey sent from EDOS like 2 weeks ago, much long after the directive was sent. If there was another survey, perhaps I missed it, but or are you referring to discussions with the unions? I guess I'm not clear. And then, so this memo gives the suggestion that there was like some deep dive, scientific, rigorous process. But what I'm hearing from you is sort of disparate data sources that we use to sort of intuit what needed to be changed. And so again, can you help me square the circle on this? What information was used? Where is that information? Can we take a look at it? And was it based in best practices? Was it based in rigorous analysis? Or was it based on employee sentiment and discussions with the unions only?
Yeah, from my perspective, it was all of those things. And we have more of those. I talked to the sheriff last week too about potentially taking a look at some of those surveys and some of the deeper outcomes that we can provide there. But it was all of those things. I think it was really discussing with the unions. I don't think that wasn't a small part of it. That was an important piece to us. But I think we did cover quite a bit of information to take a look. And not just in a vacuum, how this would affect Sheriff's Department long term.
So do you have like a folder that says, executive directive 26001 evidence and data analysis? Or is this sort of like we had some meetings and used our best judgment? I'm still sort of waiting for like, what was the deliverable that caused us to have this set of structures, and what was the deliberative process that led you to that memo?
Yeah, we don't have a folder marked 22601, but the information can't be pulled together and put in a folder. And it was largely a lot of that is there's scientific data that we got and the sheriff has done over a number of years to take a look. There's work that the chief compliance officer did to take a look at the percentage of lower level ones. So there at some level, I have a few people on this phone, and what we can do is try to put something together in terms of a folder so that you guys can maybe have something in a form that is able to lay it out. And there again, it may not look the way that you think it needs to look, or but it is genuinely what we use to make this decision. So I'll make sure we put a folder together for you.
That's great. And why I'm interested in that folder is because I really appreciate data-driven decision-making, right? And so when I am looking at a large-scale program change, I want to know if the changes that I'm making worked. And so if I don't have data that says this is the cause and here's the treatment and here's the impact of that treatment, I don't know if I did all this work and nothing happened that actually impacted the other things. And so what we heard from the sheriff a few weeks ago was like, we don't, exit interviews are voluntary. And so like, we do have some exit interviews, and what we hear is like, it's difficult to work at the sheriff's department and I don't like being investigated for bad behavior and, whatever else. But like, do you have facts that say the core, the key, the single most important factor in retention is the fact that discipline is cumbersome for employees? And if so, these changes are expected to improve retention by X amount, right? Like I'm just sort of missing this like rigor that will lead us to understand that the consequential changes we've made here are worthwhile, right? Like people can get hurt, the log will be broken, right? Like, is that all going to be worth it in the end? And how will we know that that's true if we have not done the analysis upfront?
Yeah, fair question, and that's what we intend to. I think some of this too, though. I think it's important to. I think it's important to state and remember that. I mean, and I was around when the PID came into creation, when Eric was around and created it, and Troy, and I remember that, and I remember the time, and I remember the state that the sheriff department was in. And I will repeat, I think at the time it was absolutely necessary. We needed to happen. Not only did we have Paul Childs, there was a number of things that were there. When we take a look back and we look at the number of infractions that weren't necessarily turned over to IAB at the time, internal IB, they would stack up, and you'd have hundreds of these things, and then there'd be a big download of issues, and even that became a huge problem as part of the culture. I think, and I said that very clear. I've said that in media situations and the otherwise, and I think that that was appropriate. I will say that I will fast forward. We fast forward now, and I'm just giving you a little thought process behind this when we talk about how this came about. I think some of this also is baselining what this looks like. I think all of the or most of the supervisors who are here now were not there 16 years ago. I think I will say two things. If we're hiring sheriff deputies who are sergeants, majors, and captains, who don't have the integrity and don't have the ability to manage frontline employees, follow the line and the rigor of what they're hired to do, and the city of Denver is going to pay them, if they cannot do this job, we got a bigger problem. We have a problem with the department on multiple levels. I think it is important not to get, this wasn't done to give them a pass as much as it is to say, your frontline supervisors, this is what the city is paying you to do. And if you do not do your job, the city of Denver, the community, myself, the process will not sit there and give you a pass. I will tell you, I've had two very straightforward, and I've had this conversation, sheriff is on the phone, and I've said it to him. If that's the problem, we have problems with deputies, and we have a problem with the sheriff. We have larger problems if we can't trust those people that I'm paying my tax dollars to pay their thing. So I will tell you, Julia, some of it also is wanting to take that time to make the investment to say, listen, this is what we're doing as a department. This is what you're going to follow as a department. If you do not follow it, we'll rip it out. And it may be even more stringent than it was before. But this, in many ways, is pressing those people that the city is spending millions of dollars on to make sure that the people in custody are safe, are doing exactly what we're paying them to do. And I'm hoping, as well as you, that we take a look at this in 6 months or 3 months or a year, and that we see that they're doing their job. And if not, guess what? There'll be some people without work, and we'll take a look at it then. But this is an investment, and it is a gamble, and it is an investment. But that is the mindset and the reasoning that we're taking that approach. I don't want to continue to cause a backlog or cause us to look at things in a way that we're constantly looking backwards on 16, 17 years ago. At some point, those managers, those supervisors will have to step up to those roles and do what all of us as community are expecting them to do.
Why the urgency, Director Gardner? Why such urgency that we couldn't follow the process as outlined in the ordinance? Why the urgency that we can't get a pause from your office, from as we asked the sheriff last time, please pause so that we can get everyone on the same page and thus not have the confusion that this directive has created. So why is there such urgency?
I have a sense of urgency. The sense of urgency is I'll tell you again, the sense of urgency is from me wanting to work on not just a change of culture, but there again, making sure that we're investing all the training, all the focus, all of the tools that these frontline supervisors need to do their job, to improve the department, and be able to overall improve hopefully the people in custody and make sure that no one is getting into harm. But it's a sense of urgency that we continue to improve the department. The department has done a good job. It's been moving in the right direction. I think we continue that, and I think that takes some investment from this office, and that's what I did.
Unfortunately, though, because of that directive and unilateral action, it did not allow for the participation of your partner, the Office of Independent Monitor, to have all of the information that they need in order to be able to work effectively with you on these different issues. And so that is the downfall of the urgency, is the fact that you did not work with an important partner. And so you know, you indicate in that directive that we're returning the disciplinary system to its intended purpose, but at the same time, there was a reason why at least at that point, before the directive, that the disciplinary system had been put into effect for various important reasons.
More than aware.
Right. We know that you're aware. And so we're baffled then as to the fact that it appears again for us on this side of the fence that you're trying to bypass discipline monitoring.
Yep. Thank you. I don't know what more to say about that other than the fact that I've heard you. I can definitely appreciate that perspective. And you know, that's why also I'll mention this again, that going forward, I think that when things come out like this, I think there are some new procedures in place, I think that will help.
Okay, so are you intending to, I mean, has there been a meeting set with the OIM and her staff to work out the issues that have been created for OIM and work through those problems that are now facing the OIM? One of which is that you put information or data into the Blue Team program, and only the OIM, meaning she herself, can access it as opposed to anyone else in her staff. That's a big problem. There are other problems. So when is that meeting with your team and her team happening?
Yeah, we fully intend to make sure the investigators have access to Blue Team and any of the other tools that they need to be able to make sure that the process is followed. Danica, our Chief Compliance Officer, has been sending emails back and forth to take and try to calibrate that data. I don't have one today, but they are working on it, and we'll make sure that someone from my team informs COB as to when that date will be.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Julia, you have your hand up. Thank you.
Thanks. Just a few other questions here. So I think when we were talking about EBD, right, we sort of got to the place where we're treating it as a pilot and we're going to learn some things and, you know, come back together with data and understand, you know, what has an effect and what doesn't. And so I'm curious why we did not take a similar tact with this change in the Sheriff's Department. Some of the categories are as articulately as I can describe banana nut muffins for inclusion in a directive like this. You know, that deputies are breaking the law, but only if it doesn't hurt someone in a facility where they are sworn to uphold the law. I literally cannot wrap my head around how that would ever get approved. And I can only imagine that folks in custody would like that same grace extended to them. And so, you know, I'm unclear how we got to like this mega list of things rather than, you know, some experimental and light touch, sort of non-controversial, less controversial items. And so I'll just ask that question, but I will also say that these changes under your watch are coming at a time when the city has never before paid out as many lawsuits as it has in recent years. The city is almost at $40 million in lawsuits due to police and public safety misconduct. And so to take that context, the sheriff's department right now is being sued in federal court for mistreatment of an inmate who was not properly cared for in custody. That lawsuit is like 6 weeks old. And so we are seeing the significant consequences of discipline and accountability fall to the bottom line of taxpayers, right? $40 million. The city has a $200 million budget gap, and we have paid $40 million out to residents of the city because we have hurt them by the hands of this department. So, you know, we could have saved a lot of jobs at the city if we had not hurt people by doing, you know, our jobs in the police department. So I'm just sort of like, I don't understand the logic model of trying to be a good steward of tax dollars to keep the city in a risk managed approach at the same time that the city has sort of lost control of the accountability processes for public safety. And so like how we got to this long list where we're sort of willing to take the risk of harm when we are paying a boatload of money to people that we have already harmed. I like, help me understand your logic model of risk management here, and help me understand how we got to a long list as opposed to, we want to start with an experiment. We'll take the top lowest risk item and do some data analysis or do some experimentation with that to understand if that has an impact on morale or that has an impact on retention. But we came back with this giant list with all sorts of wacky exceptions and processes listed that the sheriff himself 2 weeks ago said, you know, we'll take a look at some of those. Like, some of these are insane. So help me understand, in a risk managed approach where your job is to help manage costs for the city, that this is the best choice you can make for financial stewardship.
I think we did start with a list with relatively low infractions. I will say that even the ones that we have in court, the infraction that's in court right now and those allegations in terms of what caused that death, that very action would not have qualified for any of the 19 that are on this list. And so for those ones that still are causing harm to people in custody, and the ones that the majority of these payments from the city have come about, none of those things are on this list. And all of those things, those egregious moves that are done, and those patterns are still going to be handled the same way that they are today. I will say also that as we talk about the process of making sure that we have the best things on this list, I will say what the sheriff said, where I'm not closed to taking a look at these and having further discussion at these. I think all of these policies, especially within law enforcement, it's not just Denver, it's all across the US, as we just came back this week from listening to other departments and what they're going through and how they're working through these things as well, is a constant calibration and movement in terms of how these need to be adjusted. And so I'm always open to taking a look at these items in the directives. And if something is identified that is not helpful, or we see a constant pattern in something, I think that's the way we adjust. I think we did start with a number of items, I think, that are relatively low in impact. And at the same time, I do see and understand why even some of those we probably need to go back and take a look at, and we are going and taking a look at them right now, and intend to continue to work with the OIM to dial in and make sure we have the best infractions with the least impact.
All right. I see that Alfredo Reyes. Hi, Alfredo. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, all. Good morning, Director Gardner. It's not lost on me that you were once a member of the COB.
Mhm.
and you went through a lot of those difficult conversations around public accountability and public safety from our side and
Yeah.
from the community side. And I can't understand now what's changed, what happened now that you're the executive director of public safety, how now the process has become so muddied and lacking that collaborative spirit that is included in the ordinance, that's required by the ordinance, and how you would perceive all of this if you were still sitting with us on the COB. I can't understand the switch
Yeah.
and how, having gone through this process, we find ourselves in such a mess where trust has been frayed, where accountability from our perspective seems to being undermined. What happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I won't answer it from the perspective of what happened. I will tell you this. Things were very, very different when I was on COB. I can tell you that. And my relationships were very good. I had very good relationships with the police chief and the sheriff at that time. And I held both of their feet to the fire. And I think if they were on here, going back even to Chief White, he would probably echo that. That's number one. I think that the trust was there. And there are many items that I can remember on my time on that board that we shared a lot of trust. We did. And that was very different. So if there's anything that was different, it was that. But it could be the timing, it could be the person, it could be the personalities. There are a lot of different reasons why sometimes dynamic change in a board situation. I will say this, moving forward though, I'm not one to hang out in spots that I think are going to try to continue to. I'm a believer in moving forward and how do I make things better and how do we improve things. I think that there's a lot of opportunity here. I hear feedback coming from. I don't know whether it's a speaker or someone's unmuted, but I can hardly hear myself talk. Hello?
Yeah,
Okay,
go
that's
ahead.
better. Yeah, that's better now. So I will say, Alfredo, that's a legitimate question. But in terms of how I view COB and its importance to the overall safety apparatus has never changed. I actually worked with council to ensure that the independent monitor was complete and part and separate from the mayoral system. I can remember having discussions with Mayor Hancock, when he was in office, and he and I talked regularly when I was chair of the COB. And it was to tell him that I was interested in moving, not fast, but making sure we move right. Part of that was I had constant discussions with people in these seats. And I think that earned a lot of trust back. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I've never seen it at where we are in terms of mistrust. But I think more importantly, there's opportunity for us to continue to work together because I don't believe, matter of fact, I know that the chief of police does not see the OIM or COB as a hindrance. I know that he believes deeply in it. And I say that both sitting where you sit and sitting where I sit now. I will say the same for Sheriff Diggins. There's a healthy tension that should exist between COB and OIM. It's supposed to be there. It's absolutely necessary. And I think it's good. It's accountability for all of us. So that I will tell you. It doesn't bother me that COB or OIM is in the picture. I fought for it to be that way. I earnestly believe in it. And I think that as we look forward, I think there are ways to strengthen how we work together.
Yeah, and if I can, I think what I noticed there in the difference is that when you were on this side, Director Gardner, the idea of moving right and not fast, it doesn't seem to be holding anymore. That sense of urgency that you expressed is not doing things right. And in that process, it's that trust that is being undermined. I wouldn't say that it's the personalities per se or the people that are now part of the COB. It's rather the decision to not respect the process and move fast without the people that made the process what it is and that are committed to having a city that's well resourced, that allows us to all feel safe and be on the same team. So
Julia, your hand is raised. Before you start, Julia, I do want to echo what Alfredo has said, Director Gardner. We understand that it is very frustrating to go through a process and that it's far easier to just do things. And sometimes there's that what is that, an idiom that says go ahead and proceed and then ask for forgiveness later. But at the same time, the price that is paid for that is sometimes a much greater price than was expected. And so we now have, at least for the COB, I'm speaking for the COB, 3 instances. The EBD trying to be rolled out unilaterally almost, and then we were able to get have the chief listen to the concerns that we had, and we have what we consider to be a better situation. We're still not exactly totally satisfied, and we won't be because you had the final word on those. But then the taser policy came out, and that was pretty, disconcerting. Again, a change to the use of force policy and no consultation. And then we have this third one, which is the directive. And as I have indicated before, we were already in very thin ice when we finished. Well, finished is probably too strong, but when we've gotten through a lot of the EBD work, and now twice right after each other, having no consultation, doing things unilaterally, it just starts to create that pattern that is very upsetting to the community that we represent. So, Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, I am hoping to shift the conversation to EBD if we can. So that was also finalized a few weeks ago. And where I understood that landed, and I would love your confirmation, is that we are in a 1-year pilot around these changes. And so I would like to understand what you have in mind in terms of that pilot structure. What kinds of data are we going to gather? Who's going to be doing that data gathering? Where will that data be shared? And what role will the COB and or OIM have in the oversight and collaboration on the effectiveness of that program? So if you can sort of talk about, now that it's live, what's the plan? I think we'd benefit from that.
Yeah, real quick before I answer that, I want to go back to the taser policy mentioned, and that is that we're not, I want to be very clear on that. We did have discussion around the taser policy.
Yes, we did.
One thing that we discussed, that we will move forward with the equipment.
Yes.
But we will not change. I'll repeat,
Right.
we are not changing the level of force to which an officer or sheriff is able to actualize or use that taser. And the reason for that is what we discussed, is that this is an opportunity for us to work together to make sure that we're coming up with that policy. Now, whether we cannot go back and say, well, this is the same thing. We could and say this is the same thing that we wish you would have did with sheriff directive. And I understand that, and I understand your sentiment completely. But I think this is an opportunity to really roll it back and make sure that we're rolling that policy out at the very least with you guys 100%. So I just wanted to be clear on that. We're not moving. I'll say it publicly, what I said privately. We are not moving forward, changing the standard for the use of force with the taser.
And that's what I wish you would do.
Okay.
Pause it, pause the directive
I
for
know you do.
X amount of time and
I
let
know
us
it.
get settled so that we can work effectively together.
I know you do on that one, and I know you've made that clear, and I'll repeat, I'm not going to pause that one, but I do respect what you're saying. At the same time, while I'm not going to repeal it, and I want to make sure I respect Julia's question, but although I'm not going to do that, I will tell you as well that I'm very open and still intend to make sure that we're taking a look at each one of these changes as well. And do I have something today that is written outright? We're going to look at this on this date, this particular one on this date. No, I don't. But I think it's very important that we work through these. And I believe that we can work through these. And if there's something that doesn't make sense to do, we've already taken a look. The one that Julia is referencing around the misdemeanors and other, we've already been taking a really deep look at that. And that is a perspective also, I think that's important to be considered. Even though it's a misdemeanor, I think it is still important that we take a look at that and be really precise in how we're saying that, because you're right. There are some people who are currently in custody for misdemeanors. So how do we approach that? And to me, I don't see it. I never believe that everything has to be sometimes 100% when it's right. I don't have that mindset. And I understand that there's some things that we will do. I think the most important mindset is keeping your head and your heart open to that feedback and being able to say, if something needs to be better, let's make it better. And that's the approach that I'm taking to that. I want to get back to your question before I lose that thought. Yes. So,
EBD.
yes, thank you. So on the EBD side, yes, the policy is now published. Commander Addison has completed the satisfaction survey, and I believe he's forwarded to OIM. Be forwarded. Surveys will be forwarded to complaints, and completed surveys will be maintained and shared with the research team. So that's one part of measuring that success factor with EBD. When it comes to the training, we've not yet had anyone take advantage of EBD. So don't really have, as Chief Thomas mentioned, a specific training available to officers yet. And as we talked about in the past too, we think it's more important to see how this training is going to look per case based on that officer, because we want to make sure that the training is something crafted to that officer. And you asked more than that, but I don't remember now because I went on.
How are we going to evaluate it? Who's doing the evaluation? What are the metrics?
Yes. All right. Yeah, some of it is
and most importantly, how is the COB and OIM going to be engaged throughout the process?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, some of it will be, of course, with the surveys. The other part will be, I'm trying to remember this gentleman's name. We got the name of a person from Altogether Denver, from Together Colorado, excuse me. The name of Kyle Dobson of UVA, University of Virginia. We got this, I think, from Marilyn Ackerman, that we'll be working together to identify those evaluation metrics. So we're going to take what the community, one particular partner in the community has a long-standing interest in this as well. They gave us this information and we've reached out to them in addition to the survey. How, from a academic perspective, does that look? Secondly, I think also in the EDOS, in the directive itself, there's also timeframes where we sit down. I don't remember where, I think it's quarterly. And Esther can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. I think where we meet and evaluate how much we're using EBD, how much of the officers are willing to take us up on it, and what the outcomes are and what the responses are from community.
Okay,
so there's a regular cadence.
Regarding the surveys, we haven't seen anything. Would that be sent to us, please?
Yeah, we can get that.
Now, this is a draft, or is this already completed?
The survey, it's still in draft form, which is why we sent it to the independent monitor.
Okay. Well, we would like to see that as well.
And just,
Okay.
I think there were some questions that were maybe floated around in email a while ago, but it was sort of like the community survey was like, is EBD working? Which, like, as somebody who's very involved in the processes here, I don't know how I would have any context to understand, like, if Rufina was going through EBD, how I would know, because it's an employment matter, and I am a general public person, how I will ever know what the outcome of that is, either for Rufina or for the department. And so the engagement of stakeholders on this feels lumpy in a way that I can't quite, like, if it's going to have an impact, I think you have to be closer to the problem, rather than like, does Julia think this for, Rufina worked? Like, how will I ever know that? So I just am sort of like, are we asking the right questions here? And is this survey sort of?
Well, I think the survey is to the complainant, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay,
This
but
is the
Director Garner was
satisfaction
saying there was
survey.
like, okay, so to the complainant, but
Satisfaction
then there was like
survey.
community engagement surveys or something
No.
like that. So, okay, I think some clarity on that will
Satisfaction
be.
survey to the
Okay.
complainant is what I thought we were talking
Correct.
about.
Correct.
Okay.
That is, I should have been clear on that. Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. It's actually to the complainant, to the person in the community, to ask them what their thoughts and feelings are around whether or not they felt that the training was significant enough to them, or whether they felt it was disproportionate, whether the harm that they felt that they went through, it was not sufficient to just have this training, that whether or not they feel more should have been done from a punitive perspective to the officer.
Right, right. So we would like to see that survey. I've said this before, training on a case by case. It'll be interesting to see. What was the gentleman's name that you're contemplating being the evaluator?
Kyle Dobson.
Kyle
Kyle, Kyle Dobson.
from University of Virginia.
Yes, that particular one was suggested to us there again by Together Colorado. So we're going to be working together to identify those evaluation metrics. Evidently, this person has done some pretty in-depth work, and I know Chief Thomas and his team will be reaching out to them to determine what they did and what type of metrics they've used in the past as we continue to grow the program, hopefully.
Have they had any previous connection to DPD?
No.
Okay.
No,
So it's a neutral evaluator.
Yeah, when Marilyn gave us this information, Chief Thomas had never heard of this person, neither have I.
Okay.
This is someone that we received from them, and their research is saying that this is someone that they read as they were reading about EBD. They read the research evidently from UVA or something and recommended it to us. So we said that's great because we don't know him at all.
Yes, that is a good thing to have a neutral evaluator with no previous connection to DPD. All right, and then the current status of the community feedback mechanism. There was discussion with the chief about having a group of community members who would be giving feedback also on this as it goes in the pilot phase. What has happened with that?
Yeah, I think the chief is still working with his team to comprise it, and I don't necessarily have an update on that yet, but I think I'm almost positive we'll have one by the next time he's on.
Right, yes. He will be on in August.
Yes.
Has a decision, okay, let's see. What other data are they gathering from this pilot program?
There again, that's part of first of all, part of that was what Commander Addison is working on. Commander Addison is over the Internal Affairs Division, and he's been working really closely on that questionnaire to the community that will be responding. When I say community, those impacted by the said officer. And I think also in connection with the UVA, I think both of those surveys are going to be important to be able to provide us with an overarching view of how successful or not successful the program is.
Right. Okay. All right. Going now to the question number 1. As you can see, we don't follow our own designations here. When your office receives proposed discipline from the chief of police, sheriff, or fire chief, you are able to approve, disapprove, or modify that proposal, also known as a written command. We would like to know and understand this stage of the disciplinary process and the role your office plays. For example, for the last quarter of 2025 and the first 2 quarters of 2026, how many written commands did your office approve? How many did your office disapprove? And how many did your office modify? And we would like a list of the associated case numbers for each case that you disapproved or modified.
All right, yeah, we'll get that data to you. I know that we are in receipt of the question, and I know Esther will be working really closely with Danica to make sure that those happen. I will say that in terms of how we receive and propose discipline, you know, that the chief of police and the fire provide that written command piece, obviously, which is a recommendation for discipline outcomes in the case. Recommendations also made regarding the mitigating or aggravating factors, which you know. When we receive those cases, the decisions aren't made in a vacuum. I, along with the chief compliance officer and folks in the compliance office, as well as CAO representative that we have here in the Department of Safety, which is Wendy, we meet regularly on these cases. What is done then is, from the legal perspective, taking a look directly at that particular disciplinary decision by the written command and the entire case, as well as the OIM recommendation. All of that is really made into I won't say an actual physical folder, but more of a virtual folder of, hey, these are all the things that play into that particular case. We weigh it against the infraction itself that's written into the policy, and get that legal side from Wendy or Carl or who else, Jennifer, who's in there, as well as from Danica, and then myself, and we all sit in a room and we take a look at these piece by piece. So it's not done, to answer that first question, how much am I involved? I involve myself by taking in all of these pieces of information, from the OIM, from the legal perspective, from the compliance perspective, from looking at the aggravators to looking at the mitigators. And that's how we come up with whether or not we agree with that or not.
Okay, and do we have numbers for the last quarter and the first 2 quarters of 2026?
Yep, like I mentioned, we'll get that information to you. I don't have those numbers readily available, but Esther and her team will make sure that we get those to you.
So following up on that, when your office does disapprove or modify what the chief or the sheriff have provided to you, does that require your direct involvement?
Yep, each one of those. Of course, my compliance office works directly with those from primarily. Danica, that's largely her responsibility, is really working through all these along with if it's the sheriff department, it's the PID, it's the AIU, it's the CRU, it's the OIM, it's all of these different pieces. By the time it gets to me, it's expected that all of those items have been worked through. I take a look at all of the things that are provided, as well as the written policy itself, as well as the OIM perspective itself. If it's sheriff department, the CRU, the AIU, or the PID, either one of those things. If it's DPD, it's what the chief's hearing has provided. There's a chief's hearing every Tuesday, which I sit in myself, or my deputy, which is Angela Casillas. Either one of us will sit in those hearings. We'll listen to what the chief's hearing says, and in that chief's hearing, if you've ever been in one, you also hear what the OIM's perspective is in those chief, because the independent monitor does have a monitor in the chief's hearing. And it's important to say, once the police department says, based on our discipline, this is what we think the level is for that officer, the independent monitor's investigator will also say, this is what the independent monitor thinks. In that phone call, everyone is able to chime in and either agree with that and say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. That's a very important meeting, because many times in that meeting, I could think of one last week where we're listening to the case and the independent monitor thought that it should be maybe a different level and an aggravator should be used. We agree quite more than what people would think. I definitely agree more than what people probably think, that the monitor is right on this, and I think something should be aggravated or something should be or we're looking at mitigating factors. So that's a very important piece in that. After that piece, my office also does look at that final, and that's how we make a decision. It's definitely made by adding all of these different pieces, and then that's how we come to it.
So do you have a written set of guidelines or a framework that helps you in making these decisions? Because these are really, really critical decisions.
Yep, all of it, and all of us are aware that they're critical decisions. We definitely don't look at it whether or not somebody's asking whether or not they want vanilla or chocolate ice cream. We understand the gravity of these, and that's a great question. And to answer your question directly, Rafina, really what we take a look at and what I rely on Wendy a lot for, and Jennifer, is we're looking at the letter of that policy that should have guided the action of that officer or that deputy. That's the Bible, if you would, for where that should fall. Then when you start looking at other pieces of that, whether they're aggravators and mitigators, now that's another piece I don't need to tell you as an attorney. Now we're taking a look at some of what precipitated or state of mind or all of these other things. Has the person done it before? So all of this paints that complete picture. But at the end of the day, it is the law and it's the written policy that governs whether or not that the potential penalty for that officer or that deputy or firefighter.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay. All right. Let's move on to what is the status of the closure letters to complainants? As you know, we've been concerned about the fact that individuals that have brought concerns to the OIM or to the police get a very generic boilerplate letter, hardly gives any information about what happened.
Yeah.
So that was one of our recommendations, at least for 2024, 2025. So just wondering if we could get a sample of what is the current closure letter. Have there been any changes, and what's the timeline if changes have yet to be made?
Sure, I thank you. I agree with that assessment. And that's one thing that Danica came in and focused in on really well. So I want to explain first, those closure letters for complaint are sent by IA for DPD, just so those who listen who may not be aware of what these are. And DFD, closure letter for DSD matters are sent by the PID. So you have internal affairs, DFD, DPD, you have the PID sending them for DSD. For DPD, improvements were actually made about 18 months ago, but I have examples of letters prepared to be able to be seen. I'll send them over right after this meeting. Also have examples of the old versions and then the updated versions so that you can see the difference in those closure letters.
Okay. And so DPD has made changes. Anything on the sheriff's department piece?
Yeah, I don't have an update to changes in closure letters on the DSD closure letters, but I will also get that to you after this meeting.
Well, I should ask Julia, did we have concerns about DSD as well?
Yeah, because I hadn't seen anything for that in particular.
Not that I
Probably
recall.
not. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, and so the improvement we're looking for is being more specific as to the course of the case and giving that complainant some closure as to their concerns and what happened. So
Now,
that's
once
what we're
again,
going to be looking for.
now duly noted, and I think that that's good. I think that also, I mean, that's an area also that we can continue to work with COB back as we find a healthy space to be in with these closure letters where we ensure that those folks affected have a true voice in what is taking place and understand clearly. So I agree with that 100%.
Going on to the next question, what is the current status of any electronic surveillance contracts?
Ooh, well, if we're there's a lot of them, but if we're referring to ALPRs, I'll say we crossed that bridge already, and there's nothing open right now, I can tell you, other than the current license plate reader contract that we have. So nothing new there.
Maybe just a clarification on that. So
Sure.
Axon was selected to replace Flock.
Yes.
And last I had heard, there were some delays on the cameras, but maybe I'm mixing that up with something else. So are the Axon cameras up and running in the limited locations that they are supposed to be?
Yeah, they've started to go up. It's been quite the lift, because not only do we have to take those down, we have to work with Dottie in order to make sure that we're putting those on the right. It's a lot to that, but they began to go up, Julia, but they're not all up. And I know that you guys the board did request, I think, locations where those cameras will be. I'm still working with those because they're not all there. And of course, some of those we'll be working with the board and be able to provide that necessarily to the board, but not to the community in general. Obviously, is they're used for tools for apprehending some pretty bad folks. Yeah.
And just a question on that. So as you know, if we're putting one up every few weeks or few months, as they, as all of the departments coordinate on that, is that live, or are we waiting for the whole network to be live?
They're going to become live as they go up, so it'll scale one at a time. I don't have a direct number, but I will get that for you.
Okay, so some are live now, and the reason I ask is I was in a Lyft on Monday, and the person driving my Lyft was apprehended in an unmarked car. So I suspected that it was a totally wild experience, but I suspected that they crossed the camera that was looking for them. So I don't often have interactions other than here with the Denver Police Department, but I was accidentally arrested on Monday.
Okay, now, Julia, you weren't
I'm sorry.
arrested. You were in a car that the man was apprehended.
Anyway, I was just trying to get to the airport, but it was totally wild.
Oh,
So
no.
the question is, are those cameras running? And if they are, I experienced them firsthand.
Well, hopefully you had as pleasant as possible experience with DPD, and we don't have any officer that was discourteous to you.
They were all very, very
okay,
kind. Yes.
Good. But to answer your question in direct and short form, I will find out how many we have deployed and kind of what that is to send to this group confidentially.
That would be very helpful. Appreciate that. Any other contracts being contemplated?
Not right now. I mean, there are talks, of course. We've already crossed the Rubicon with the tasers, so that's been done. The only other things that are going on technology-wise also is that, the drone is first responder, but we have not inked anything with that yet. That is still where it was when we spoke to you. And in 100% disclosure with this group and the public, we've not discussed making any moves anytime soon with that. And if we do, there again is another opportunity for us I see it as another way to bring this group in sooner rather than later, but nothing immediately. Still taking a look at the pilot, still trying to figure it out, not to mention still trying to make sure this is something on the on the precipice for next year. I will tell you this in terms of technology. One thing that we've been working on closely with Councilwoman Chantel Lewis and Councilwoman Jamie Torres is around ShotSpotter. That's a low yield tool. It's a very low yield tool. It's one that I've been very interested in years before I got to this position. But I think in a lot of discussions with Chief Thomas and talking to him, we see that it's a low yield tool. In very much discussions with them about how do we prepare to sunset that. I don't believe that it's a very helpful one. I think we could probably divert that investment to other things that will help with public safety and not just from an electronic standpoint. So I will tell you that that is one thing from an electronic perspective that I'm working on.
That's an interesting segue to our next question, which is, what is the Department of Safety doing to address a spike in youth gun violence?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because that's a really important one. I will tell you what may be surprising to some of us is that really 7% 7% of the what we've seen with violence happening this summer, especially gun violence, has been youth. Really, the other 93% really have been grown adults, really 30 and up. We have not seen, knock on wood, a huge spike in youth violence as much as we've seen a huge spike in interpersonal conflict between adults. That's been the most concerning and also the most difficult to police, right? Because short of you going door to door to everyone checking to see if they're okay, I think the only things that we can do a lot of times is to continue to educate the public. Also, another important component to that is making sure that we're looking at guns in the community. Illegal guns, gun ownership, where these guns are. I was talking to the chief the other day in terms of this, as we were talking about how do we work on reduction strategies, which we put a reduction strategy forward to the mayor's office and a couple of other folks to take a look at. But you look 30 plus years ago, when he would pull people over, he said, you may find a revolver, if that, on maybe very rarely. Now, they're so prevalent within society, it's very difficult. So some of the things that we're doing is working with community partners. We have something coming up in the next couple of weeks that we'll have here at the Crime Lab with Men of Color Collaborative, Servicios, and some other partners to talk to juveniles about the dangers of gun violence, but not just that, but also talk to them about education, opportunities, things of that nature. So when it comes to the youth outreach, that's the focus. But to be honest with you, the youth violence has not been the spike this summer. It's large, even when we take a look at what just happened over at Ultra Lounge, which we know as a result, we kind of move forward to do what needed to be done. I think those are older adults, which sometimes is more difficult to corral.
So do you have the numbers of previous years versus this year in terms of that youth?
We do have those numbers. I don't have them with me, but we can get them to you.
Okay, yes,
Yeah,
we would like to see that.
But according to DPD, and I'll say also that we're working very closely with ONS, which is Office of Neighborhood Safety, and OSEI, because this is not just a safety issue. We need to look at this holistically and look at those programs from a counseling perspective, because these are other things. A lot of these are precipitated by domestic violence, which is huge, which we see a lot of. And I will say, before sitting in this seat, I always knew domestic violence was a problem, as we all do, but I had no idea just how frequently domestic violence is a main precipitator of a lot of this. So I think enlisting the help of DDPHE and OSEI and ONS also to come alongside the Department of Safety to try and educate members on DV. And not just that, educate on how we can respond better and differently to domestic violence and try to catch it before we're in the 911 phase. And typically, by the time we get there, you're too late. And also, some of those is that some of the folks who are the victims of DV don't feel comfortable enough to call 911, or they feel trapped. How do we address that? So all of these things are being looked at by my office in conjunction with a number of different offices in the city.
Any questions from the board on this? Okay, last question then. You're making it through. The division chief Megan Dodge complaint. What is the situation there?
Yes, another good question. That is, you have a number, you had different items in that complaint. As you know, that report was sent out external to the city. That report came back. It was very important to make sure that no one in the complaint or near the complaint was responsible for being involved in the oversight of that, which means we sent that to the PID because it's totally in apart from it. Also,
and for those who aren't familiar with the acronym.
Yes, thank you. Public Integrity Division, which is essentially the outsourced version of IA for DSD, or the Denver Sheriff's Department. So we took a look at each one of those investigations, each one of those complaints separately. And so when the PID got it, they didn't treat it as, oh, this has been ruled on, this is what it is. There's been actually an investigation on each one of those separate complaints, or each one of those separate items. We've gotten through, well, most all of them, and we're making good progress on those. And I would expect, I'm not going to share anything from that because it's a personnel matter, but we will be able to do another thing that we have actually investigated as well. We know that the local news has that report, which I'm not happy about, and I don't like. And I will tell you that I also ordered an investigation to try and figure out, to get to the bottom of how that made its way, because that's also important, because it's not fair to anyone in that report, whether it be Chief Dodge or anyone else mentioned in there. So I have two investigations that I've run with that, but I will let you know as soon as we come up with some, as soon as we're finished with the report. And I don't anticipate it being too much longer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board on that issue? Okay. All right. I appreciate the fact that you have given us quite a bit of information. There's still a lot of questions, but we are going to, I'm just going to open the floor just for a few minutes. We're at 11:20 for 10 more minutes to hear from the community any questions that they might have. Again, you're in a 3-minute time frame. You please ask your question and allow then Executive Director Gardner to respond. Do I see any hands raised? Will, are we seeing anyone raise their hand?
I don't see any hands. Oh, stand by.
Got
Hold
one
on
there.
just a moment. Marilyn Ackerman, just a moment, please. Marilyn, if you can hear me, go ahead and test your mic, please.
Marilyn, go ahead. Oh, she's muted. Can you unmute?
I think her mic is allowed.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Now we
Yes,
can
go
hear
ahead.
you.
I
Thank
have
you,
you.
Marilyn.
I just wanted to clarify some of what Director Gardner said about Together Colorado promoting Kyle Dobson as a researcher on the EBD process. Kyle Dobson actually was known to the chief ahead of time when we were working with trying to figure out how to evaluate the Before the Blue and Beyond the Badge program a year ago. The University of Virginia, Kyle Dobson and his partner at the time reached out to us because they had met somebody at one of the chiefs' conferences nationally, and actually Councilwoman Sarah Parody told him to contact us that we might be interested in an outside evaluator. And so we were, and we met with him multiple times for a year. The chief on a couple of those meetings with other people who are part of the Before the Blue and Beyond the Badge program. But the city attorney's office is what we were told us that we couldn't work with them because the Dobson team wanted to work with body worn cameras and to compare before and after interactions from people who are part of the Before the Blue and Beyond the Badge. So when the University of Georgia became a contention point with EBD, I just said at that last meeting with you, Al Gardner and Sheriff Diggins and Chief Thomas, what about Kyle Dobson from the University of Virginia? So my understanding, just from Kyle, who texted and talked to me briefly, that he had a private meeting with Chief Thomas and that he was exploring it. And, you know, the only reason, Kyle said the only reason he was having this conversation was because we had, Together Colorado and Marilyn Ackerman had said that name to Chief Thomas. And he said, you know, we didn't get a contract with you for the other thing. So let's see what we can do. And so they're in discussion, I guess. I don't know. I'm not part of that anymore. I just promoted that name at a meeting.
Okay. Well, thanks for that clarification. There's still not a formal relationship that Kyle Dobson has had, as how you've described it, though.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, I'm
No.
not going to be part of those conversations or the contract writing or whatever's going to happen there, but that's where the name came from. It is from Together Colorado, but he reached out to us originally. Gosh, that could even be a year and a half ago. Sarah's on the call too. I can't remember, but we met with him and his partner who was in Indiana at the time. And they have multiple contracts with police departments doing research projects around the country. And I can't remember the city that Kyle lives in Virginia, but he's on their police chief's advisory board and working with cameras and all of those kinds of research things.
Thank you, Marilyn. Okay, any other guests, participants that wish to ask a question or make a comment? Okay, not seeing any. I will thank you, Executive Director Gardner. Thank you so much for coming today. I do want to take up one last bit of business, and that was to approve our minutes from the June 26th and July 10th meetings. If I may have a motion to approve.
So moved.
A second, please.
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Larry, we did establish quorum, and quorum is established throughout the meeting, even if that individual leaves. So we had quorum to be able to do that. Thank you. All right. I will then, we will now move to executive session. I need a motion and a vote to move to executive session for the purposes of discussing confidential information.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. I believe Executive Gardner
Thank you.
has something to add.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. You know, all I want to say was thank you for having me. I hate that I missed the last one. Of course, I tell you it was family, but thank you for being able to. I will tell you this board and the work that you do. The questions are welcome. They may be difficult questions, but they should be difficult. They should cause me and my team to think. They should cause me to think my approach to how I'm doing things, why I'm doing things, and where I'm doing things. So I fully expect that from this group. And so I appreciate it. Just nothing but make what we have in this city better. That's why Denver is unique, because a lot of cities don't do this. So I'm not offended by those, but I thank you for those. And I think that to Alfredo's question that we had earlier, that he asked earlier, is a very important question that I take very seriously about how do we leave this space better than when we came in. So thank you for it. I appreciate it.
And I would like to hear from you and your team as to when the meeting for us to have conversation about the directive can happen. So
Okay, you
appreciate
will.
that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And we will, I was proceeding with a move to executive session for the purposes of discussing confidential information about internal investigations and other material subject to the deliberative process privilege. Motion,
So moved.
second.
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
we are now adjourned from the public meeting and moving into executive session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board member,
I
stand by a moment.
have to drop at 11:30, so I will not be joining
Okay,
executive session.
thank you.
Thanks. See you soon.